Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing a Swordsoul deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck is an extremely powerful deck that summons out all sorts of really cool synchro monsters to help us go in for game. This deck is super fun to be able to play and I'm really excited to show you guys my list. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notice so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description in a single video, getting a signed card in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be laying 3 copies of Moyi. Moyi is a definite 3 of the deck and the best normal summon in the entire build, because when this card is normal or special summon, you can reveal a Swordsoul card or a worm monster in your hand to be able to special summon out a Swordsoul token to your side of the field, which is a worm tuner water level 4, 0 attack and 0 defense, which helps us go in for all sorts of different synchro plays because the token is a tuner monster. It also has the ability, while that token is in the monster zone, the player who summoned it cannot special summon monsters from the X deck except for synchro monsters, which is not that big of a deal because it's pretty much all we're summoning anyways. And if this card is sent to the graveyard as a synchro material, you can draw a card, which is a great effect. We then play 3 copies of Longyun. Longyun is a definite 3 of in the build and a really awesome card to help us go in for level 10 synchro plays, because you can discard one other Swordsoul card or a worm monster to be able to special summon this card from your hand. Then you get to special summon out a Swordsoul token, which is a great effect. And if this card is sent to the graveyard as a synchro material, you can inflict 1200 points of damage to your opponent, which just does a little bit of burn damage to the opponent, which is really good. We then play 2 copies of Taiye. Taiye is a definite 2 of in the build, but I only feel like you need 2 copies of Taiye. It has the ability to banish a Swordsoul or a worm monster from your graveyard to be able to special summon a Swordsoul token, and if this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, you can send a Swordsoul card or a worm monster from your deck to the graveyard, which is a great effect for this card to have. We then play 3 copies of Ecclesia. Ecclesia is a really awesome card for the deck and pretty much is a Swordsoul card because it has the ability that if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon this card from your hand. But it's a great effect because this card is a level 4 tuner. It also has the ability during the main phase, quick effect, you can tribute this card to be able to special summon out a Swordsoul monster from your hand or deck, which is great to be able to get your copies of Moyi on your side of the field with this card's ability. We then play 3 copies of Ashuna. Ashuna is a definite 3 of in the build and just a really good card overall in this particular deck, because if you control no effect monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if you control a face-up non-effect monster, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard to be able to special summon out a Tenyi monster from your deck, except another copy of this card. Also, you can't special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except worm monsters, which is not the big of a deal because we have a bunch of really cool synchro monsters that are actually worm monsters that we can still go into after we use that effect. We then play 3 copies of Vashuda. Vashuda is a really cool 3 of the deck that kind of works like a compulse, which is really cool. Because if you control no effect monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you control a face-up non-effect monster, you can manage this card from your hand or graveyard, and then target one card that your opponent controls and return it back to the hand, which is a pretty good effect to be able to bounce a card. We then play 2 copies of Adahara. Adahara is just a really good 2 of in this particular deck because it is a level 1 tuner monster, and it can also special summon itself to your side of the field just like your copy of Ashuna and Vashuda. But it also has the ability that if you control a face-up non-effect monster, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard, and then target one of your banished worm monsters except this card and add it back to your hand, which is a great effect to be able to recover some of your cards. We then play 3 copies of Bysteel Magnamut. This card is insanely powerful in this deck and a really awesome hand trap to be able to put on your side of the field because it is a level 6 monster. So you can go in for some really awesome level 10 synchro plays by using this and one of these Swordsoul tokens. But it also has the ability that you can target a light or dark monster in either player's graveyard and banish it if you use special summon this card, and it's a quick effect if your opponent controls a monster. And if this card is special summoned, you can activate the effect that during the end phase of this turn, you had a dragon monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand, except another copy of this card, which we're always adding from our deck to our hand are copies of Druis Worm. Druid's Form is a really awesome 2-of in this deck, but I only feel like you need 2 copies of this card. It does have the ability that if this card is sent from the field to the grave, you get to target a special summon monster that your opponent controls and send it to the graveyard, which is a great effect for this card to have. I just feel like 2 copies is totally fine for this card in this particular build though. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is just an awesome hand trap in this particular build to be able to use to stop the opponent from touching the deck, and is a really awesome card. You can also change out the Bysteel monsters in this particular deck for copies of Ghost Bell and DD Crow if you need a more budget option. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Swordsoul Sacred Summit. Sacred Summit is a definite 1-of in this build, and it's basically the monster reborn for Swordsoul, which is a great effect for this card to have. We then play 2 copies of Pot of Desires. Pot of Desires is really good in this particular deck because we basically play everything we need at 3, which is really cool because banishing 10 is not that big of a deal in this deck, but drawing 2 is. We then play 3 copies of Swordsoul Emergence. Swordsoul Emergence is a really good 3-of in this particular deck to let us add a Swordsoul monster from our deck to our hand, which is a great effect to be able to add any of our Swordsoul monsters like our copies of Long Yun, Tai or Mo Yi from our deck to our hand off this card. This card is basically the Rhoda of the deck. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing a single copy of Swordsoul Blackout. Swordsoul Blackout is a really cool card in this deck, and it's basically an Icarus attack for this build, because it lets you target a worm monster that you control and 2 guards that your opponent controls and destroy them. And if this card is banished, you get to special summon out a Swordsoul token to your side of the field, which is a pretty good effect. We then play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Impermanence is a really cool 3-of in the deck just to stop your opponent's monster effects, and you can also set this card to your side of the field to lock down entire columns, which is really cool for spells and traps. We then play 3 copies of Evenly Matched. I chose to main Evenly Matched in this particular build because this deck goes really well second, so this card just helps out a lot to be able to break your opponent's board and help you go in for game during the following turn, which is just really, really good. This card is super good in this particular build. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, guys, we're going to be playing 2 copies of the Grandmaster. The Grandmaster is really, really good in this deck, and it's a super powerful boss monster that if this card is synchro summon, you get to add from your deck to your hand or banish a Swordsoul card, which is a great effect to be able to use. Also, quick effect, you can banish a Swordsoul card or a worm monster from your hand or grave, and then target 1 other effect monster on the field and negate its effects until the end of this turn, which is a awesome effect. This card is basically a walking negate. We then play a single copy of the Supreme Sovereign. This card is insanely powerful in the deck and a definite 1-of in this build. Then for each banished card, this card gains 100 attack and defense, and monsters your opponent control lose 100 attack and defense, which is insanely powerful with cards like Desires in this build, because just by activating Desires, this card will go up to 4,000 attack points, which is insanely good. This card also has the ability, if this card would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish 1 card from your grave instead, which is a great effect to be able to use because of its other effect, that if a card is banished except during the damage step, you can banish 1 card each from both your opponent's field and grave. We then play a single copy of the Sinister Sovereign. This card does a lot of burn damage and is just a really cool card to put on your side of the field. This card also has a really good effect that if you synchro summon another worm monster, while this monster is on the field, you get to draw a card, which helps you a lot to be able to just dig into the deck for more combo pieces. We then play 2 copies of Baxia. Baxia is a really cool 2-of in the deck because it can bounce multiple cards on the field and is basically like a walking monster reborn. We then play a single copy of Yazi. Yazi is just a really good 1-of in this deck, super easy to summon to your side of the field and a great combo piece. We then play a single copy of Chaofeng. Chaofeng can come in extremely handy in this particular build. It can lock down an entire attribute, which is really nice. We then play a single copy of the Draco Berserker. This card is a worm and a really awesome card to be able to put in this deck because it has the ability that when your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can banish that card. And if this card attacks and destroys an effect monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, this card gains attack equal to destroyed monster's original attack. Also can make a second attack on a monster during that battle phase, which is a really good effect. We then play a single copy of Crimson Blader. Crimson Blader is really good in this deck, and I love this card in this particular build, especially in today's meta, because if this card destroys an opponent's monster of battle and sends it to the graveyard, your opponent cannot normal or special summon level 5 or higher monsters during their next turn, which is a crazy awesome effect, especially with Tier Limit running around. We then play a single copy of Baron de Fleur. Baron de Fleur is just a walking negate in this deck and just a really good card overall. We then play a single copy of Psychic in Punisher. I love this card in the deck. It can get absolutely massive, it can spot remove cards, and it's just really good in this particular deck. We then play a single copy of Shaman of the Tenyi. Shaman of the Tenyi is a great combo piece in the deck because you can discard a card and then target a worm monster in your grave and special summon it. Also, for the rest of the turn, you cannot activate the effects of monsters special summon from the X deck except Tenyi monsters, which is not that big of a deal, but it's just a really good effect to be able to bring back a card. We then play 2 copies of Monk of the Tenyi. Monk is just a really good 2 in the deck. You could play 3 copies of this card, but this card is just really good to be able to special summon out one of your Tenyi monsters of the field and then link it away for this card to give you a non-effect monster on the field, which is a great effect. This card is just a really good 2 of in this build. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played Swordsoul before, I highly recommend it because this deck is extremely powerful and just a really good deck overall. I really love this particular build, especially with a going second build with cards like Evenly Match, and this deck just makes it extremely powerful and fun to play. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell next so you can come part of our notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.